we actually separate the two, and then we train our teachers in the mental health aspect. So we have licensed mental health professionals on staff. We have therapists available on staff for students, and we have what we call an up to 10-to-1 ratio. So that means for our therapists, they are never assigned more than 10 students at any given time. Our students get one-to-one individual therapeutic sessions with licensed therapists twice weekly. We have therapists teach classes that we call enrichment classes, which serve as our group counseling. And then they also do our family counseling for those families that would like to. And then our therapists actually also do professional development for our teachers. So all of our teachers have masters in their specialized field. So they are trained to teach in that field. Again, because we want to be able to provide that rigorous academic experience and also an individualized educational experience.
So welcome everyone, my fellow educators and school leaders. I'm Avinash, co-founder of Tomo Club, and at Tomo Club podcast series, today we have Lauren. She's the head of school at Sage Alliance Schools, and it's a very beautiful school with a combination of both academic education and therapeutic education, of taking mental health as a primary focus area. These two are very interesting topics that every school leader and every teacher talks about, but very few make them at a part of the center part. So I am super excited, Lauren, to talk to you. But it would be great if you can give an introduction about yourself as well.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. It's one of my great passions to talk about what we do in education in general. So any platform that I can, I get very excited about it. So just a little bit about me. So my name is Lauren Bleggi. I am, as you said, the head of school for Sage Alliance Schools in our 4th location. A bit of background on me. My career in education started actually as an elementary school teacher. I got my bachelor's at University of North Carolina in Wilmington. And then I realized I wanted more of an impact in the classroom than a teacher can make. Teachers make such a significant impact, but I wanted to be able to really have time to get to know students on a more individual level. And I just wasn't able to have that as a teacher. And so I decided to pursue a master's in school counseling. And that was my first introduction into mental health. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. I loved the combination of being able to help an individual, a human, be able to navigate whatever challenges were that showed up for them, because mental health it's such an all-encompassing word. There's so many different ways that mental health can show up, but then also helping them achieve these things that they sometimes don't believe that they can, when it comes to their academics, when it comes to life beyond high school. So I was a school counselor for quite a few years in Utah. I got my master's in the University of Utah, and then I decided to go back for my doctorate. And so I was able to get my doctorate at Baylor University in learning and organizational change. And I decided to do that because as a school counselor, there's only so much I can do in terms of who I can help. There was always some students that we just didn't have the resources to help. We didn't have the ability to help. And so all we could do was provide referrals and hope that the family was able to figure it out on their own. And I wanted to be able to do more than that. And so I went for my doctorate so that I could be in a position to make more of a change, make more of an impact in that world. And I was lucky enough to find Sage Alliance. And before Sage Alliance, I actually didn't know that there were schools like this. I was introduced to a therapeutic school when I was introduced to Sage. And there's very, very few therapeutic schools, but it is growing. And each therapeutic school, one thing to know about it is it's very unique. Each one has a different student profile that they really help with. And it's beautiful because, as I said, mental health is not a one-stop shop for people. Even, and we can get more in depth in this later, but even something like anxiety, that one term, 5 people can be diagnosed with it, and you'll have 5 different presentations with it.
Right.
So it's a unique world. but being able to help students navigate their mental health and be able to achieve academically, be able to overcome, be able to become the person they want to be, it's the most amazing opportunity. So I'm very, very grateful to be in this role.
Wow. First of all, a great journey. I think experience from so many different states and must be very exciting. And yeah, I think when I got introduced with Sage School, I myself was very intrigued of the way you guys work. Um, but so, do you guys also deal with neurodiverse kids, or do you guys work with anxiety, depression primarily?
Yeah, so a little bit of both. So, one thing that you'll find when working in mental health is a lot of mental health comes with learning differences as well, and it presents in different ways. So, we definitely work with neurodivergent students. The nice thing is that because we are a specialized school, we really cater towards the students that present most with the severe anxiety, the depression. A lot of students that we work with have ADHD. A lot of them have PTSD, have traumatic experiences, a lot of things like that. And that usually, most of the times, that is the most pressing need, the one that is causing the most difficulty for the student to achieve. But that said, usually those mental health challenges that they're navigating come with those learning differences. So we do work with students with neurodivergent presentations, and we are able to bring in specialists to help with those any sort of difficulty or challenge that the student is navigating. So that's one of the nice things that comes with what we do. It's not something specific where you present with this and therefore you need to fit into our box. We are able to, when a student comes into us, and I love to explain to parents this way, when students enter into the public school system, just because of the nature of what it is, it's usually they give the student a box and they say, you will find a way to fit into that. That is the goal of our school system. When it comes to Sage, we take that box and we then help them build their own box, one that they can fit into, one that they have created on their own, one that fits them perfectly. And that's really what we're doing. So we absolutely work with neurodivergent students because that, in a way, is what mental health is. It's seeing the world in a way that not many others can. It's a different perspective. And really, that's what makes the world in general so beautiful, is that two people could have the exact same experience, and their perception, how they viewed it, how they experienced it are completely different. And that's what it's like in mental health. Two people with the same diagnosis, completely different experiences. So I hope that answered your question with the neurodivergence, but yes, we do help students there.
No, absolutely. I think honestly, the spectrum is so wide and it has so many permutation and combinations. Like, for example, we also work with a lot of students, and among our audience, there is students with neurodiversity. But still, we can never say it out loud that we work with students with neurodiversity because we cannot claim that we can work with everyone and anyone. It's such a specialized field that unless you are looking at each student um, as an individual, you can't claim that your product will work for them or your curriculum is suitable for them. So hence, you would find most of us who work with neurodiverse kids yet will never market it like that because again, there will be edge cases, there will be uh, so many spectrum that we cannot cater to, even though we are trying to. So, but when you said about the overall mission, on the academically rigorous curriculum and also mental health support, but what makes me think that for our students with significant emotional challenges, these two priorities can sometimes feel at a conflict, or at odds. So, and it's how do you navigate ensuring both things to go together?
That is a fantastic question. And that's actually one of the areas that SAGE really specializes in, because one thing that you'll see as you're looking at different therapeutic schools, there seems to be somewhat of an assumption by the general population where if a student is struggling with mental health, they may not be academically capable. And that is not the case. There are situations where, there are learning differences, but even that doesn't mean capabilities are any less. It just means that the supports need to be different so that the student can find their success. So the way that we approach that is we want to give students the rigorous education that they would see in any other school that they would go to. So the way that we approach that is, first and foremost, we get an understanding of what are the students' triggers when they're in the classroom. What is it that makes learning difficult? Is it the subject matter? Is it being near peers? Is it the teacher? Is it having a lot of people in the class? Is it having a little bit of people in the class? We try to get a really good understanding, and we individualize the student's education at their level. So what that means is that we have individualized learning spaces. So if a student is in the classroom and they feel that trigger coming on and they need to step out of the class, they absolutely can. We have a room set aside, and teachers always have the work available so the students can take that work. They're not missing any education when they step out of the room. They just need to navigate. When they step out of that room, they have access to their therapist. They also have access to academic support to help keep them on track as they are navigating whatever the trigger was for them.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the rigorous academics, the reason that we say it that way is because we do not set a limit on the level of intensity in the academics. We have college prep classes, we have honors classes, we have the option in some of our locations for AP classes. We want to do dual enrollment classes. We don't want to set a level on what a student is capable of. That we will offer it if the student is willing and open to the challenge. That said, we also have classes that cater to students that might need to improve certain skills before they're able to go up to that level of rigor. But for them, it's still rigorous. We always challenge the student at their level, so it's always a rigorous curriculum for that student.
I'm so glad you are doing that, because it's a very general perception that uh, to let these students be able to do just bare minimum and not giving them the opportunity to challenge themselves, because the society in general just treat them that if they're doing bare minimum, that's good for them. And I'm glad you are breaking that bias and giving them the full stack of opportunities, and depends upon them, right? There's one thing
Absolutely.
that comes to my mind. So over the years, the number of students who have been recommended IEPs in public school settings, it has gone way up, and there is a lot of uh, rumors or a lot of claims that slapping a kid with an IEP is a very standard way to make money, right? Students showing some kind of attention deficit at early classes, which is fairly normal. I have a kid, he is going to be jumpy at some days. It's very easy to just recommend IEPs, right? And whether it's a financial scam, whether it is laziness at the educator's end, or just, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on the fact that IEP in general is increasing? Is it reflective of actual mental health crisis, or do you think it's also a combination of both?
That's interesting especially with it being increased. I have seen the increase in IEPs. That's gotten me excited though, because in my opinion, every student should have an IEP. It's basically a one-stop shop of how
Yeah.
to understand the student. All the teachers have to do is read the IEP, and it tells them what are the student's triggers. How do I support this student? What does this student need that other students may not need? Would a small group help the student? Would a large group help the student? Does a student like to raise their hand, or does that make them shut down? And so for me, it's probably because I do work in special education, and my focus is really helping the students that fall through the cracks. But for me, having increased IEPs is a very good thing, because it's increasing the view that there is a mental health crisis. And the reason why there's a mental health crisis is because the world has changed, and we as a population are not willing to change with it as fast as it is changing. There's
Mm.
this expectation that you continue performing at a certain type of way, but the world is completely changing. And to give you an example of that, the way that schools were created, let's take high school, for example. The way that it was created, to my understanding, it was created in a way to prepare students for the factories, to prepare people to work in the factories. It was, a 9 to 5 job. You have a 30-minute lunch, and it's giving them the knowledge that they need to know in order to perform a job. That's the way the school was created.
Right.
We are now in the 21st century. Jobs are completely different. The way that you can accomplish things is completely different. The way you gather knowledge is completely different. The way that you are a productive human is completely different. And yet the education system is very much the same. You have the similar goals, you have similar this, you have similar that. It doesn't change as quickly, and it's starting to catch on. And I think that's where we're seeing with the IEPs is people are starting to catch on. Our students are graduating and they are not where they should be. They are floundering because they don't have the skills, because they weren't adequately prepared, because we put them in a box and we didn't ask ourselves, why is this student jumping around? And I think that's where the comment of the laziness comes in. Why is this student jumping around? Oh, ADHD. But why though? What are the triggers? What
Right.
helps? What are the coping techniques? What helps the student learn? What helps them not learn? And then the question is, do you just graduate them so that they are out of the class and out of the system? Or do you take the time to really understand? And this is not a criticism of the public education system. They do what they can with the
Right.
amount of students that they have. But in my opinion, IEPs are a great reflection of change and growth because it is a physical showing that something needs to change. And if it doesn't change, what is the point of education? It is education doesn't end at 18. Education is a lifelong pursuit. And what does it show about the education system if we, the educators, are not willing to change and adapt and learn and grow as the world changes and grows and adapts?
No, I 100% agree with you that we need to look at every child individually and hence an IEP. But let's talk about how it can create anxiety for the parents, because if
Mm.
I am told that my kid needs IEP, I may need to hire a special ed educator out of pocket maybe, or which can be costly, or the child will have behavior referral, so might be required to do extra classes, or being unique and can be considered as being weird as well, right?
Mm.
And
Hmm.
the child is not going to be regular with the classes like other kids, so it can be not such a great feeling for the parent, of course, right? Unless they have been educated about it. So I
Yeah.
agree with you on that front that there is a pro and a con, but yeah, it is still feel sometimes weird to be not a part of the group.
Absolutely. And that's a great perspective to add to it because when your student does, let's say a student does get an IEP, what does that reflect on the parents? Is there a feeling of, obviously there's going to be a feeling of, some concern about, okay, what can I do to help my student? But also a feeling of what have I not done to help my
Yeah.
student? And that is a difficult line to follow. I would like to preface this. I am not a parent myself. So, that's not something that I have experienced, but I do have, nieces and nephews, which different, but I can understand to that degree. And then also just with the students that I work with, it's never what did I not do? It's now so what can I do now? And it's a matter of what does this document tell me? What can I do with it from this point? And education, really, there's so many different ways to approach it. You can get the specialist, you can get, extra help that way. But then that's the question for the schools where now we know that this student has this need and they need it addressed. What can you do to educate the child in this? Because that's where we bring in FAPE, for instance, the free and appropriate education. That's what the IEP shows us. It shows us what is an appropriate education. That appropriate education should be free. So
Mhm.
how can we make a free and appropriate education? And that's where you see things like private schools come in, because public schools may not be able to offer that appropriate education. So you see private schools come in where it's saying, I can offer that appropriate education that is documented in here. So it's hard to say what the right, quote unquote, right thing to do in
Right.
that instance, because there is an emotional tie to it. And I don't think there's a way around the emotional tie, because as a parent, all you want is your child to be safe and happy and, be able to become the person they want to become, to have every opportunity uh, open to them. How
Right.
do you make that happen? And that is the difficulty with navigating the education system, is how do you as a parent know everything? And I'm sure that you've seen this, especially as a parent and an educator. Once you open those doors, it can be so overwhelming. You have people coming to you from every direction telling, if you don't do this, your child will not be successful. And if you don't do this, are you seeing this? You better be careful. There's so many different things that you have to be on the lookout for. And so I do understand that IEP would come with that emotional side as
Right.
well. Speaking of, kind of bringing it to Sage, one thing that we do recognize is that emotional impact. So we offer the family counseling as well, because you cannot support, this is a great example of how you cannot support the student without first supporting the family, because you only have the student for 6 hours a day if you're lucky.
Right.
The rest of the time they're with family, they're with peers, they're in the world. They need their support system to also have these skills. And many adults have not had mental health training or have needed to have mental health training. Either they don't they don't have to navigate it themselves, or they've been able to navigate it in a different way. And so providing the training so that they can understand their students' experience also helps them with theirs, because now it's like, okay, I am helping. I can see the progress. I know how to help, because I can absolutely see that IEP comes back and it's that feeling a little bit of helplessness. Like, what do I do now? How do I help?
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the overwhelming aspect. I literally have to, pick up my wife's phone and unfollow few influencers, some educational influencers, some parenting influencers, because they tend to push you in a corner and make you feel that you're not doing enough. And that's a very,
Mm-hmm.
very problematic situation. Especially after you have done the entire day, so much hard work, and somebody tell me that you're not doing enough is not great. So I'm glad you brought that family counseling angle as well. Um, like I know it's been the organization Sage has been existing for a while, right? I think I read somewhere it's since 1997. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so the landscape of the mental health has shifted significantly since then, right? And it's constantly evolving. So first of all, I would like to know what's the recent most common mental health challenge among the students that you guys are currently dealing with, and how has your framework evolved to adapt that?
That's a great question. So you're absolutely right. Sage has been around since 1997. We now have 4 locations. We have 3 locations in New Jersey, and then the one that I'm running, it's New York City. So we're in the heart of Manhattan, about 4 blocks south of the Empire State Building, which is pretty fun. But the way that the mental health has kind of grown over the years, it's very interesting. As you probably know, mental health kind of had a more of a stigma, early 2000s, 90s,
Yeah.
80s, things like that. And over the years, it's become a bit less stigmatized, still stigmatized. There's definitely still some bias there. But it has become less stigmatized, which is really nice. So when it first began, it was kind of this unknown thing where it was seen as a almost for some, there was some concern that it would be seen as a negative to get mental health help. Whereas now it's
Sorry,
something. Oh, yeah.
I'll cut you. I have heard the statement, if you teach mental health to my kid, you're making my child soft. I've heard that statement.
Yes, exactly. Where this idea where you just have to toughen up, you just have to deal with it. If you could just learn to deal with it on your own, if you face it head on in some way, that's a negative. Over the years, thankfully, that mindset has changed a bit, and so what we're seeing is a lot more openness and understanding and empathizing to mental health, especially when it comes to the amount of support that the students are coming with. The amount of, parents are coming in with a really phenomenal understanding of what their students are dealing with, and a really great eagerness to continue that process, to learn more. And it's so wonderful to see. The interesting thing with mental health as well is there tends to be a shift about once every 5 years. We see more kind of a shift in what tends to be the more presenting mental health. The one that I would say we're seeing now, and I would attribute that to our social media, that the access that we have, would be anxiety. Anxiety is just rampant at the moment. But something that's interesting that we see as well is the combination with anxiety and OCD. So the need to have some type of order in your life, and it's kind of combining with the anxiety and OCD together. So that's kind of been a shift that we've been seeing. But I would say the anxiety is definitely higher than usual. And it comes in the form of students not wanting to attend school because school has been such an unsafe place. They see school as unsafe, whether it's because of bullying, it could be because of a negative interaction with a teacher, could be a negative interaction with a peer. A lot of times it could be negative interactions with just the subjects themselves. Maybe they feel like there's no way they can learn it, like math or science, sometimes even, English. And so they take that anxiety and they go into full avoidance. And so that's what we call school refusal. And so that's where the students go out of their way to not attend school. And that's where you see a higher level of what is considered to be the learning differences. There's assumption of learning differences, but sometimes it's just educational gaps where they've been out of school for a certain amount of time. But the interesting thing about anxiety that I think a lot of people forget, though, is anxiety is a very normal emotion. Everybody has anxiety. It is part of who we are. So to have the anxiety disorder is where you have a heightened amount of anxiety. Having anxiety is just part of being human. So what we're seeing is a combination of both anxiety disorder and students that have heightened anxiety, but maybe not the disorder itself, where it's just their environment. And so coming into a place like Sage, where you have licensed therapists on staff, all of the students are navigating mental health. All of the teachers are very aware of mental health, and it's a supportive environment, to the point where we have cameras everywhere, just so students know they never have to run into a he said, she said situation. Being in that environment, they're able to regulate and navigate. And we try to limit technology, because that is also a big part, is they just get an influx of information. And it can lead to, well, what's going to happen next? I don't know. And then you get into the conversation of, what do you want to do after high school? And they're like, well, is there even going to be a world after high school? Oh my gosh. It leads into these conversations that we can have with students. It's difficult growing up right now. It's very, very difficult. There's so many different things, and you can see everything happening at once. Whereas, when past generations have grown up, what's happening in your town. You hear the really big news. You know what's happening down the street, but you don't know what's happening, in a different country or even in a different state. You don't see their trials. You don't see their challenges, but we see everything.
Right.
So I would say that is the biggest one right now, is just understanding the anxiety that it is to grow up right now.
No, I can't agree with you more. And like, Honestly, I got my first smartphone in 2011 when I was like just starting my first year at a college. So I'm glad I had my entire K-12 journey without a smartphone. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't, like, I have seen the other anxiety issue that I've seen the most is because of body issues and self-worth.
Mm,
I think that is one of the most common
absolutely.
I have seen throughout my journey while talking to kids. Um, Also on the fact that that I want to understand how you guys are dealing with the teacher hiring aspect, because I'll tell you a story. Like when we work with public schools or charter schools, even private schools, they usually have one counselor to, let's say, 200 students or 300. I'm talking about a good ratio. It usually go above 300. And so this responsibility of teaching students about social emotional well-being is supposed to be a counselor's job, but counselors cannot take more than one session a month for every classrooms. So they expect the
Mhm.
English teacher or the math teacher to do those lessons, who think they would rather do their own subject at that time. So it becomes a very like a relay of responsibility of who's supposed to teach these skills. And
Mhm.
so how do you guys deal with that, first of all? And also, since you said most of your teachers are already they understand mental health or they are trained in that direction, how do you still manage to hire people with both academic inclination and mental health? It must be a difficult, typical hiring, I would say.
So for us, we actually separate the two and then we train our teachers in the mental health aspect. So we have licensed mental health professionals on staff. We have therapists available on staff for students, and we have a what we call an up to 10 to 1 ratio. So that means for our therapists, they are never assigned more than 10 students at any given time. They have 10 to 1 at all times. And the reason why we have that is so that it won't be on the teachers can be there in a moment. Like if a student's having a challenging moment, but the therapist will be there to help them navigate through that challenging moment. So our students get one-to-one individual therapeutic sessions with licensed therapists twice weekly. We have therapists teach classes that we call enrichment classes, which serve as our group counseling. And then they also do our family counseling for those families that would like to. And then our therapists actually also do professional development for our teachers. So all of our teachers have masters in their specialized field. So they are trained to teach in that field. Again, because we want to be able to provide that rigorous academic experience and also an individualized educational experience. So these teachers know how to provide, a lesson where there's one student who is far and above really understanding the subject matter. They want to delve deep. They want more. And then also the student who literally the bane of their existence is this subject. They will do anything to not go to this class. So being able to balance both of those. But at the same time, you want to make sure that teachers have an understanding of what these students are going through. So with the permission of, the families, the students, we do disclose, what the students are going through. We always take confidentiality into respect. We want to make sure that the students feel comfortable with what the teachers know. But the teachers do know how to respond in those moments where a student discloses something, and they just need somebody to listen, and they just need somebody to be human with them, to empathize with them, to be a support system so they can just navigate through this moment. And then the therapist is there to help them really dive deep into it. So the teachers are aware of mental health tactics. They are trained in mental health tactics, but we also have the licensed professionals on staff ready to help whenever needed.
I love the professional development aspect of therapists training the teachers. I'm glad. I think that would be enough to create that balance of hiring and then training, because you can't expect anybody to hire with both these set of qualities together. So I love that. Um, Also, I was thinking that for a lot of students who have been challenged by severe anxiety or other issues, traditional academic scores or metrics might not be a reflective of their overall progress, right? So how do you
Mhm.
define and measure success for these students? or do you guys have some non-traditional indicators or qualitative assessments? So how do you communicate that to the families?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do progress reports, and these progress reports are not just grades. Grades is they're literally one aspect of how a student is progressing. And so when we do a progress report, we go in depth. We have our teachers write up what is it that the student has shown, what areas has a student shown progress in. And it could be something as simple as the student, when they first walked in, they had their hoodie up, they wouldn't look at anybody in the eye. And you know what? There was a class the other day where they said hi to another student. That is progress. That is progress that we are seeing.
Right.
So we take note of any and all progress, and we do weekly communications with the parents so that they're always up to date. The progress reports themselves are every quarter, so we do quarterly progress reports. For our grades, we do what's called project-based learning or performance-based learning. And so what that is it really helps with students who have test anxiety. We don't rely solely on tests for grades. We provide options for students to show their knowledge, to show what they know. A lot of our students are very creative. They're very artistic. They love to create. And so they'll tell us a story. And so that's what we'll ask them to do is say, tell us a story about Alexander the Great.
Mm.
And instead of giving them a 20-question test about when did Alexander the Great do this, what did he do next? Things like that. We ask them to tell us a story. And in that story, they answer all the questions that they would have answered on a test.
Right.
And so we're able to make note of you are learning the material, you know the material, you're staying up to date, while also not forcing them to give into that anxiety. Now, on the flip side of that, we do have a college and career readiness program. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky because a lot of our students, about 85% of our students, do choose to go on to a 2 or 4 year college. What is one thing that they will absolutely have to do in college? Take a test. And so at the same time, we want to make sure they are prepared for that. So we do incorporate test taking, but on the therapeutic approach, where we take the anxiety away from taking tests and eventually we combine the two, where they are able to take a test in the academic field. And we do that same thing for the SAT. A lot of our students who choose to go to college choose to take the SAT. And so we want to make sure to take away the anxiety with that. So we help them practice. What is it like taking a 2.5-hour test on a computer? What kind of breaks would I get? And we base that on their individual experience. A lot of them get testing accommodations. And so we really want to make sure that we are reflecting the student's progress, not against another student or against a certain line that society has created, but the actual student's progress, because every student is making progress. It's their progress. It's not, we don't compare it to anybody else's.
Honestly, I love that answer. And I'm not sure how you guys are able to track each element of it. Like when you said a student saying hi to another student is a progress, but because that would need a lot of time from a teacher's end. So, how do you guys keep a track of so many parameters which are not always recordable?
So we ask our teachers to make notes of their classes and to make notes of notable moments. And then we keep track of those notable moments. So when we put together the progress reports, they don't have to remember 3 months worth of information. They have a track record of notable moments for all of those students. And they can look back to how did the student perform when they first got there to how are they performing now and incorporate those notable moments along the way. And so we always want to make sure that we are very accurate with that. So some of those notable moments are not always, productive progress. Sometimes it's like, okay, we're noticing a little backtrack, but that's also helpful for us to know because we can say, we noticed this and here's how we implemented. Because we have what we call observational support, where we don't wait for the student and the family to come to us saying, hey, I need help. We notice the changes day to day. And the way that we can do that is we have a morning meeting every single day. The entire staff comes together and we talk about what changes did you see in students? Is it that a student was really excited one day and then their head was on the desk the next day? That's something for the therapist to follow up on. Hey, what happened there? Is there anything that we can do to help? because we want to make sure that we are noticing everything. These students and families, I would say, in the education system and in most systems, it's difficult to advocate for yourself when you're consistently told there's not much we can do, you know? And so they kind of you learn not to advocate for yourself. We are teaching students to advocate for themselves, to speak up, to say, this is what I need, because then we can do something about it. We can, and I always tell students, the worst thing that I can say in that moment is, I'm not sure we can provide that right now, but I'm absolutely going to look into it and see if we can, because we always want to make sure students feel seen and heard and understood. But that's how we are able to provide those progress reports, is we take notes consistently. Our teachers are trained, and myself, my staff, director of clinical services, therapist, everyone is directed and trained to consistently take notes so that we have a really good amount of information for students for throughout the entire school year.
No, that's very rigorous. I'm pretty sure you guys are putting in a lot of hard work to do all of this. But I have one question.
Yeah.
Although you have set up a lot of processes, from hiring to creating individualized learning programs to creating great assessments, are there still some students that you cannot serve and that you have to say no to them?
Yes. There's one specific student or type of student that we are not able to provide support to. And that is a student who is, when they are they're pervasively aggressive or violent towards other students, towards teachers. And that's not to say that it is a decision that they make. That's not to say that that is a choice that they are making. It is just they don't have the skills yet on how to navigate when they are frustrated, when they are navigating a challenging moment. So we work with students that more internalize when they are going through a challenging moment. We're not able to support students that externalize. And that is mostly because when we want to make sure, first and foremost, that all students and staff are safe. We want to make sure that we have the supports in place to help a student when they are experiencing that type of situation. But also a lot of our students are struggling with school refusal. And so it's that safety aspect. We want to make sure that they feel a sense of safety in the classroom, that they feel a sense of continuity, that they can have a sense of, I know what to expect in every single class from every single person, and they know that the staff is there to support them in every single way. So that would be the one type of student that we would not be able to. That said, it's important to note that we evaluate. So we do have an application process at our school. And we never want a parent or family to say, well, my student had this moment where they acted out, they, were aggressive, and so there's no way that Sage would let them in. And that's not what we're saying. We do evaluate every student individually. We take a look at the long scope of things. So, and also these students are going to be experiencing triggers that they've never had before. That's part of the learning process. And because they've never had that trigger, they might react differently in a way they've never reacted before. That's to be expected. So it's not a never situation. It's we wouldn't be able to if it's a pervasive situation. And I would say when it comes to the students that have more severe learning differences, that would also be an area that we probably would not be able to support as much. We do have academic support. We do have, we can bring specialists in, things like that, but we follow a general education curriculum, and we want to make sure that students have every opportunity to be successful. So we take a look at their academic profile as well to make sure that it is a student we'd be able to support.
Got it. No, those are relevant points. I'm so sorry. I just have so many questions that's coming to mind.
No, please bring them on.
So I want to understand from a parent choice point of view, what kind of biases do they have? What kind of situation they have when they consider SAGE? Is it like I've put my kid in a public school or a private school or a charter school, and they're not being able to take care of themselves, or they're not able to excel there because their needs are not met, and then they come to SAGE? Or does SAGE becomes a first choice to go? So I want to understand
Yeah.
from a branding point of view that how do parents look at Sage, uh, and how do you guys want to project?
Yeah, so it's, usually it is the one where the student has not been able to excel in the school that they've been in. So within our 4 locations, we serve students from 4th grade to 12th grade. So the youngest grade that we have, it's in our Mawa location. That is 4th through 8th grade. Sage Alliance New York City, we serve students 7th through 12th grade. Generally speaking, the students that we see, they come in because they are not getting the services that they need, the support that they need in the classroom. So the student might be feeling overly anxious. They might be feeling depression. They could be experiencing self-harm, suicidal ideation. They could be experiencing bullying, which makes them feel unsafe. Essentially, in some way, shape, or form, they are not feeling that they are able to be successful in their school. And these are students that generally, they want to learn, they want to be educated, they want the opportunity. They're in fight or flight. They're consistently in fight or flight because the school either can't or won't provide the services that they need. So essentially, when that happens, that's when parents start looking for a specialized school, because that's what we are. We are a specialized school. And so essentially, when a parent, and again, prefacing, I'm not a parent, but essentially the process that happens, when you are looking for a school for your student, unless there have been experiences with mental health, which mental health usually doesn't start presenting until later, until after kindergarten. Sometimes it does present as earlier than kindergarten. But usually you see it present a little bit later, and that's when the parents start looking around. But I know there are therapeutic programs that start as early as kindergarten, for students that, are presenting at that young age. And that's usually to help them regulate, to help them be able to understand when they are going through a difficult situation. Because, as a 5-year-old, you're not even going to understand what anxiety is, let alone what it feels like. So there are therapeutic programs that do offer support to kindergarten and kindergarten through 3rd. Sage, we do 4th through 12th. So I would say by the time a parent is looking at Sage, they are noticing that their student is struggling. They are noticing that they've usually reached out to the school at that point saying, hey, my student is struggling. They need help. What can you provide? At that point, the school usually says, here's what we can provide. And it's just not enough to help the student. And so that's when they start looking for a specialized school that can provide that safe and supportive environment.
Wow. So I cannot even imagine the enrollment process because those parents are already kind of struggling and the kids are already stressed. So, like the amount of empathy and amount of love that you guys have to give the moment they step in has to be huge to feel that trust because they are having a lot of trust issues with schools. So I am
Absolutely.
so glad you guys are filling that gap with love and affection, and hence they are trusting you guys and trusting the education again that they can provide. Insane. Um, Now, since
Yeah.
you've been telling that most of the kids are from grade 7 to grade 12, how is your understanding about AI? First of all, from a student point of view, that those kids are using AI, how is their usage pattern? Is there any problem that you have seen encountered by the students because of AI? So let's talk from student point of view. Then I would love to talk from the teacher's point of view.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, taking from the experiences of all of our locations, I would say our students are usually coming in very adept with technology. They have a very good understanding of what technology can help with. The areas that they need assistance with from us is how to balance that with turning off the technology. They don't quite know when to turn it off because it does have that immediate gratification, the dopamine effect, where every time that you're using it, AI is like that automatic knowledge aspect, and it's amazing. And I'll get into the amazing aspect with our teachers because we definitely use it as a support. For students, they don't have the understanding of what what is AI telling me, and what do I need to fact check?
Right.
That's kind of the understanding that they need help with, because they'll just put it in and they'll be like, I believe everything that is written, um, instead of doing due diligence and looking into it themselves. So when it comes to AI, it's something that is very useful and also needs a lot of guidance for the
Right.
students, because it's seen as this is so easy. I can just type in a question. Why do I need to learn it? Because it's right here. And so that's really kind of how we approach it, is utilizing it to your benefit, but also knowing when you need to step away, knowing when you need to learn the information. So a lot of ways that we approach it is you type it into AI, and then your job, your assignment is to fact
Right.
check what it spits out. And you tell us, is it correct? Is it correct? Why is it correct? Why is it not correct? Because it shows the students that you can't believe everything. At the same time, what a great resource it could be. Um, and for the teachers, it's a great resource, especially when we do the individualized instruction for students.
Right.
One thing that they can say, yeah, it's so helpful, because you have this lesson plan that you created beautifully, and then you have this one student that it's not resonating with them, and you're trying to figure out what it is. It's a phenomenal tool to brainstorm. It's a phenomenal tool to figure out what's a different way that I could approach this. What's a new way that I can approach this? And it gives you ideas that you probably wouldn't think of on your own. So we utilize it in that way, because it's a phenomenal tool that can really open up doors that you wouldn't even expect. At the same time, when it comes to students, you have to be very, very careful, because that trust
Right.
aspect, you want to make sure they understand the limits of AI as well.
Right. No, I agree. I think you must have read about how companion.ai or other kind of uh, AI tools is also impacting students' mental health or
Mhm.
birth issues and everything else. So I'm glad you talked about both ethical use of AI and responsible use of AI, at the same time keeping your critical thinking intact while working with AI by fact check. And on the teacher end, I think you you have just said the right thing. The personalization angle is so, I think it's for the first time it can actually be implemented, because we've been talking about personalized learning for 2 decades, but now this is the first time, without expecting teachers to put hours and hours, they can actually create multiple copies of lesson plans, multiple copies of assignments, a rubric for assessments using AI. So yeah, absolutely. What about the mental health part? Or have you guys been using AI for that aspect for supporting teachers?
I would say for supporting teachers or supporting students. Is that
Uh, used by the teachers to support students.
I see. For us, it's we don't use it in terms of the mental health. We try to get that human touch. That's why we have the 10-to-1 ratio for our therapist. When our therapists are not meeting with students, they're in the classroom. I would say it is a mental health support for teachers, because they can get answers readily available. Like if they're like, how do I help a student who is insert concern here, that is definitely a support for teachers, because they can resort to that until they are, if they do feel like they're not quite sure how to respond. But in terms of supporting students, we part of what our system is, we have a director of clinical services who part of her job is to stay up to date on all the new mental health resources, the modalities, the methodologies, and we stay up to date on that because we want to be able to offer every single possible resource to our students. And so, she then does professional development for our therapists to make sure that they are aware of all the new modalities and things like that, to make sure that they provide it. So in terms of AI for supporting students, I have heard of one app. I haven't used it, but it's called Talon. I've heard of it, that app, and
Okay.
it's supported by AI, and it's supposed to be an AI type friend or therapist. So that's something that's starting to come through, but
Yeah.
we try to do it through the human touch. It's something to look into. And we're definitely not opposed to using that, but right now it's very much that with the observational support, we need more the human touch for
Right.
the student support.
No, I absolutely agree. But at the same time, I think AI can help the educators free up so much time by taking up like
Absolutely.
extra tasks so that they can spend more time with kids because it's actually needed a lot more at Sage. So I hope they learn more and they start to implement it on a daily life because not every teacher becomes that quick adopter. So it needs some specialized support to get them all along. But yeah, I think AI can have a lot of positive relevance for your school. Um, Last question that comes to mind: what's the unattended need that you guys have not been able to focus on till now, but you eagerly wants to work on it if you have like a week of time doing nothing else but just that?
Oh goodness. That is, if I had a week of time just to work on one aspect. Honestly, I this would be a very large undertaking, but I would love to see it. So we are located in New York City, which is one of the most, culturally just filled with just amazing cultural experience. And I would love to offer an experience for students where they are able to see those cultures in real time. And in each of our boroughs, there are neighborhoods where the cultures are very alive, like authentic. And I would love to offer more of an experience, a real world experience for these students where it gets them out of their day to day and they can see and experience all of the new things they can experience and see so many new things. So that's what I would love is to find a way, and it would take a big undertaking because there is so much here, but to be able to utilize New York City more than we are now. Like right now we have field trips planned and we have experiences planned, but the opportunities here are never ending, and I would love to connect our students with their community, with their culture, with their understanding that the world is filled with so much,
Right.
and help expand their view in that way. That would be amazing.
I love that. I love that. Let me twist this question with another angle. Uh, if there is an AI solution which you may or may not know about, it may exist right now, we don't know. What is that biggest problem of yours that you want AI to magically solve?
I would say how social media is fed to students. If there was one thing that AI could solve in terms of technology, one of a very uh, negative impact to mental health is social media. It
Right.
is the access to so much in such a little place. So if there was a way for AI to be able to tailor make a student's social media experience to where it would be beneficial for them as opposed to a negative experience, or because I know social media is not one of those things that's going to go away, but if there is a way to tailor make it where it wasn't so addictive, it wasn't so prevalent. I heard when TikTok shut down, a lot of my friends who have children, they have children, teenagers, and a lot of them said that their children expressed relief because now it wasn't even an option. It was just they wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. And it's because it's there because they feel the need to be in the know, because if they don't know it, then they're going to be behind, and so they have to know it. But because they go on it, now they're exposed to everything. So if there is a way to limit that, to make it a more mental health and child friendly experience, I don't know if it could, but that would be amazing.
I agree.
I think would make an impact.
Like I can just imagine an AI tool on existing Instagram, which kind of like deletes or removes stuff which might impact me in a negative way, and that AI knows about me, what really triggers me. So if it understand my triggers, if it understand my issues, I would love that, because I can't expect Instagram to do it at all because that's against
Yeah.
against their business model. But yeah, anything on top of it may work. I love that idea. This is one of the longest podcasts, because otherwise I usually run out of questions. But today I'm just
Oh,
over brimming with so many ideas. Uh,
oh, good.
so let's say there are a lot of students, a lot of parents, a lot of school leaders in a public school settings which may not have the resources or the vision like Sage could pull off, right? But they still want to make sure that the place can be a better place for their kids from the mental health aspect. So, any piece of advice that you would give to those school leaders who are still figuring out a more robust mental health structure in their school, in their existing system?
That is a very difficult question because I've worked in both public and now private sectors, and I know in a public school it's difficult, especially depending on how many students you have. What I would say, and I'm coming from this as a school counselor, I think the first thing that you would need to do is improve the school counselor ratio, because that is what a school counselor does. The school counselor is the person to help in crisis situations, to help the student navigate through that, and then make referrals to ongoing support if needed. After that, I would ask that question to the school counselors. What are you seeing? Instead of putting that on yourself as the leader, and I'm now saying that as a school leader, I can't be expected. I want to be part of everything that happens, but part of having my team is I trust that they will inform me of what is needed. And I always go through and I double check everything, but I want to make sure that they are part of it. So what I would do is I would reach out to my school counseling team and say, "Hey, what are you seeing? What do you see? What are students coming to see you for the most? What
Right.
mental health are you seeing? What is triggering them? What in this school is making them want to come to you to get help because they just feel like they can't handle it?" And that could be because there are more diagnosed students than you expected. Perhaps there are more struggling with mental health diagnoses than you expect. It could be because there's something going on in your school that you were not aware of, and you can fix that. And then lastly, if you have the resources, bring in a licensed therapist to meet with students, because it is incredibly, incredibly difficult to meet with a therapist nowadays. There are long wait lines. It's very expensive, especially if you're on Medicaid, if needing insurance. A lot of it is very difficult to navigate, especially for a family that is already trying to help their student who's in crisis. So I would say take that approach. First and foremost, improve the school counseling team and improve that school counseling ratio. And then ask your school counselors, what do our students need? What are you seeing? And then make a plan from there.
No, I think 3 out of 3 points, the two of them need more money. And sadly, that's
Mm-hmm.
very uncertain right now. In fact, I heard so many schools who were supposed to hire counselors, they're not able to, or they have to
Yeah.
let go of few. So I think that is something that everybody's want, is to have more resources, but they cannot.
Yeah.
But I still love your second point that you mentioned, that whatever team you have, at least go and talk to them to understand what is the
Ask
most
them.
common ratios, common problems coming along, and if we can work on them as a team, because I think it's very well established out there with hundreds of report of how a good sense of belongingness, a good emotional well-being can impact attendance, can impact academic score, and any public school systems, their funding formula has a major contribution of attendance, academic score, behavior referrals.
Mhm.
So investing your time and energy on this is gonna have a immediate ROI, literally.
Yeah. I completely agree, and I love your point on the belonging. That is a huge part of that mental health aspect. And in fact, before I was in this role, when I was a school counselor, but that was one of the things that we noticed with our ninth graders was they would come in and they felt very alone. They were trying to figure this new school out. And so we created a mentorship program where they would be matched with a junior or a senior who was willing to take them under their wing, teach them, help answer their questions. And they were kind of their go-to person for answering questions that way. And it was part of these students were trained, they were part of a group, they were overseen by an advisor. And that really helped a lot. And so if the schools are able to, just ask the question, what is it what's the number one thing that you are seeing? And then work on that. And then ask the next question. Okay, what are we seeing now? And then work on that. And just keep making a plan so that you are aware, why are our students struggling? What is leading to that? And then that can also help you inform parents as well, because the parents will undoubtedly come in and say, what can we do? And then you can have a response for them and can say, well, actually, this is what we're seeing, and this is how we're responding. In your student situation, maybe try A, B, and C,
Right.
something like that.
Wow. I think that's absolutely killer podcast that we have done today. So many good points. So I'm definitely sure anybody who's going to listen to this will have fun. Um, Anything else? I think we have covered a lot. Any closing remarks that you want to give?
I would say for the closing remarks, for those families that do feel like they're not quite sure what to do next, there are more resources than you might realize. It's just they're hard to find. So what I would say, the first and foremost, start Googling, especially if your student is struggling with, if you happen to be in the New York and New Jersey area and your student is struggling with, mental health, please feel free to reach out. My contact information is on our website. But tying this back to AI, if Google is not working out for you, search in AI and search, like ChatGPT is a great place to search, like, hey, my student is struggling with A, B, and C. What type of educational programs are out there? And it might be able to help with that too. But there are a lot of different types of educational programs that can support students. And there are a lot of community-based educational programs as well. I'm not going to say it's easy. It is difficult. It can be challenging, and absolutely worth it. It absolutely is.
Got it. Got it. No, absolutely. And I'll add your description in the in
Oh,
the
please.
comment
Yes.
section as well, so people can definitely reach out. But thank you so much, Lauren. We covered so many topics, and I absolutely love this podcast. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, good. Absolutely. I so appreciate you reaching out. It's one of my absolute joys and passions to bring awareness to mental health and to education, and, being able to really realize your full potential and know that it's possible.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and I'll be in touch. Have a great day.
Thank you.